Good morning, everyone. This is another episode of the Canadian Immigration Law Q&A, but a special edition where we connect with Brandy Robb, a CELPIP instructor, who is teaching all of our viewers to how to prepare for the writing test in CELPIP, how to prepare for other sections of this language test. So we have a series of 4 videos that we are doing live. We already completed 2 videos. Today we're going to talk about writing, and then the last video is going to be in 2 weeks, where we're going to talk about speaking, and we will be inviting our guests to join us for the video call and attempt their responses to how they would answer some questions. Now, Brandy, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's wonderful to be back. Looks like you are doing well as well. So hopefully we'll have some active participation today in the session. I'm really excited to get talking about the writing part of the CELPIP test.
Right. Yeah. So for those who watch us live, leave a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. Potentially share this live stream with other viewers. And we also encourage you to actively participate in the chat, because Brandy will review your answers and maybe give you some tips that will help you improve for the language test. So without any further ado, let's begin. Brandy, I will allow you to share your screen right now so that we can start your presentation and tell more about the writing test in CELPIP.
Excellent. All right. So yes, as Igor says, we've already done a little bit of work in the past month or so on your listening and your reading components for CELPIP. So today's episode is all about the writing skills, and we're going to feature target 9+. So when you're being scored for your skills in the CELPIP test, usually the level 9 or the CLB level 9 would be a minimum benchmark score that a lot of people would hope to achieve in order to apply for permanent residency skills. So today's episode is going to hopefully help all of us watching understand which writing skills we'll want to demonstrate in order to achieve at least a level 9, if not higher, if we can go as high as we possibly can. So a quick introduction about me. Again, my name's Brandy, and I am mainly an online instructor for the CELPIP test. I've been teaching for about 24 years all in total, and I've been working specifically to help people prepare for the CELPIP test for the past 4 years or so, give or take. So again, I'm hoping I can provide you with some very helpful tips today for your language skills to help you achieve your goals. So just before I share with us some writing tips and practice, I want to make sure everybody understands that if you are applying for your permanent residency status in Canada, it's important to register for the right version or form of CELPIP. So you would want to register for the CELPIP general test, which is the one here in red on the left of the screen. So this is the longer of the 2 tests because it will assess your listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So it takes about 3 hours to complete. If you are applying eventually for your Canadian citizenship, you would only need to test the listening and speaking skills. So in that case, you would apply for the green version here on the right. It's simply called General LS because it stands for listening speaking, and your test would be less than half the time really if you are using citizenship as your goal. So again, most of the people or the test takers I work with are looking for PR status. So that's why Igor and I are delivering one instructional episode, if you will, for each of these 4 language elements. So for the next, say, hour or so together, what I'd like to do is I'm going to introduce, first of all, what the CELPIP writing test looks like on the computer screens. The entire CELPIP is done online, so it's important before you take this test to understand exactly where you'll find certain information that you'll need. There are 2 tasks that you'll complete for CELPIP. So we will look at test part 1 and part 2, which would be an email and then a survey response. And at the end, I'll quickly point you in the direction of other study materials in case you're looking to do more prep on your own. All right, and again, feel free to ask your questions as we go through. I will say I can't see your questions visibly as I'm presenting, but Igor can certainly read them out as we go, and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. All right, so again, here are your 2 writing tasks. You can see for yourself, it takes roughly about an hour or so to complete the whole writing test. You've got 27 minutes for the email question, 26 minutes for the survey response. You do have a word count requirement for both tasks, and it's the same between 150 to 200 words. There is a word counter right on your computer screen, so you're going to know when you've achieved that goal. And the last thing I'll mention as we're introducing the CELPIP test for writing is that your questions themselves are going to be based on everyday occurrences. So probably you've experienced these situations before that you're writing about, or if you haven't experienced that exact situation, you can easily imagine doing so. So I think, again, it's important to understand that the CELPIP is testing us on our day-to-day language abilities. All right, so here's a computer screen. This is actually not the question we're workshopping today, so I won't spend time reading the question with you. I simply want to show you how this computer screen is structured, because every time you start your writing task, here's the first part, your email. You'll notice, of course, that there are two sides to the screen. So just like we're reading a book in English, we'll start with the left-hand page. That gives you the background information. So it's important to know who you are in this situation and what's happened. Then you turn your attention to the right-hand side, and the instructions in blue will tell you exactly who you are going to email. So this one you can see says to email the restaurant's manager. And then those 3 bulleted points below, sometimes there might even be 4 bulleted points, these are what we call the writing tasks. In other words, they're the main ideas that you absolutely must write about in your answer as you're typing into the computer screen. So you would have 27 minutes to address all of these main ideas. Now, task 1, a lot of the test takers I work with, I do lots of webinars each month to prepare people from all over the world for their CELPIP tests. I always say that the email question might feel a little bit easier than the second task, because here you can see the main ideas are provided for you. You don't have to just think them up out of your own imagination. So it gives you a start. You can see 3 different main ideas, so you would want to have at least 3 different paragraphs as you're writing, because each idea belongs in a separate paragraph. That's going to help your score overall when you organize the writing properly. You will, though, want to come up with your own specific details. So you do need to bring with you a little bit of creativity and imagination in order to formulate interesting and specific details to really expand upon the writing. The more interesting, the better the quality and the higher the score. So I'm going to draw on your participation in a moment as we come up with some details for a practice test. But know that details are important if you're looking to achieve at least a level 9 for your writing test. All right, the word count we've talked about, but the word count is always on the instruction screen as well, so you'll always know what you're supposed to do. And of course, it's an email. So we do need to understand how to structure an email. The greeting is really where you need to start. For CELPIP, you don't need to worry about the date or the subject line or anything like that. So just start with your greeting, write the rest of the email out. Your second writing task, you can see, looks very similar. You still have 2 sides that you'd want to read. The left side gives you that background info. The right side, though, is different. It gives you 2 options to select. So you're going to look at those 2 options and select one that makes sense to you. The very first sentence that you write for your response should clearly identify which of these 2 options you're writing about. And then the rest of the writing, all 200 words or so, are going to give reasons why you feel that that option is the best. So this writing task is testing your ability to present an opinion and explain why you feel that way. So again, it's a very realistic day-to-day, almost life experience. You would maybe need to use this skill at work, possibly as you're talking with friends and debating and so on. Anyway, here's a further out view of your computer screen, just so you know where to find everything. So you can see the question that we've looked at already. Up top here, you've got the timer. So keep an eye as you're typing into that white space below. Now and then, just look up to see how much time is left. Whatever you've got typed into that box when that counter clock gets to 0, meaning no time left, that's what's going to be submitted to be marked. So again, just check your time now and then. You might finish early, and some people do as they practice their writing. And if that's the case and you're happy with your work, you could click next, and you would just move yourself forward to the second writing task a little bit more quickly instead of waiting out the clock. Either way, if that clock gets to 0 or you choose to click next, that's how you'll move forward to writing task 2. Okay, now you notice there's no back button, and I need to point that out. So if you clicked next, You're moving forward now. You have no other choice. You could never then return back and fix something. So please make sure you're confident and ready to move on if you select this next button. You also don't get to carry with you extra time. That's important as well. When you start task 2, you would just have a preset number of minutes on the clock, which would be 26 minutes in that case. Anyway, counter clock, or the word counter rather, is right down here. So when you're typing away into the computer screen, that word counter will adjust in live time. So this is how you'll know when you've achieved close to 200 words would be ideal for your writing tasks. Okay, now there is a spell checker for the CELPIP writing test, and a lot of the students I work with are so happy about this. The spell check, though, is only going to identify words that it doesn't understand. So if you were to misspell a word so badly, the computer will underline it in red, and it's up to you to use your mouse and right-click on that underlined word. The computer will open up a suggested list, maybe 3 or 4 words that it thinks maybe you meant to say. If you see the correct spelling, you could click on that word. The computer will make that spelling adjustment for you. Very similar to writing in a Microsoft Word document in that regard. But the computer is not a mind reader. So you can see here, I've got 3 pairs of very easily confused words. So the words staff and stuff, word and world, quite and quiet. These words are so close in spelling, but they mean completely different things. And again, because all 6 of these words are real English words, the computer is not going to underline anything for you. So it's up to you then to trust your own writing ability, use your brain power, as you're reading through your work. When you finish typing it out, double check that all of your words are the exact words that you mean to say. You wouldn't want to have a little word choice error if you could fix it before it's submitted. Okay, now for CELPIP, when it comes time to mark or assess the level that you receive for your writing, at the moment, it's actually human raters. We call them raters rather than examiners. I guess it just sounds a bit more friendly. But there will be at least 4 different raters who are reading over both of your writing submissions. And they're reading through to look for these exact same 4 categories. So I'm pointing at the top one, which is content and coherence. So again, the more specific and interesting your details are, the higher the quality of your work, and therefore the better the score, is the easy way to think of this. Your coherence is just how easily the ideas flow together. It's basically understanding your train of thought in a sequence. Vocab is important. I would say step 1 is making sure you've selected words that make sense. They have to convey the meaning you intend. Step 2 then would be to try to elevate the interest level or the precision of those words. The more descriptive, the more precise, the more interesting your word choice, again, the better the score. A good variety of words is helpful. So if you can demonstrate to the raters that you've got such a widely developed vocab, it's going to help your score in this section as well. Readability is important, and it's a fancy word that simply means how easy you are making the reader's job by structuring your sentences properly and then organizing those sentences into paragraph form. So this section of the Rater's Checklist is literally about your writing mechanics, your grammar, your spelling. The more complex your sentence structures are, the better your score is going to be as well. And last but not least, task fulfillment means that you have completely answered the question, that all of your details are relevant and on topic, and also that you've selected the right tone. So you need to decide if you're writing a more formal piece. If you're writing to a restaurant manager, that would be pretty formal. So you wouldn't want to use slang or idioms in an email like that. Okay, so understanding your audience and selecting the right words to demonstrate that appropriate level of formality will count towards your score. And again, word count is factored in here under this section. So the last thing that we all need to understand about our writing score is that the level you receive on your CELPIP writing test factors in all 4 of these skills categories. And I say this because, again, we might have somebody that has a fantastically developed vocabulary. They might score very well under vocab, but if they're not providing any specific details, if maybe they've not paragraphed their work well and they've got lots of major grammar mistakes, so it's hard to understand, and maybe they've missed part of the question. They've not even answered the entire test question. So if we're performing poorly in those other 3 areas, just having a strong vocab score is likely not going to earn you the high score that you're hoping for. So when you're practicing at home, it's really wise to do some self-assessment first. Type out your practice email or what have you. Look back at this checklist. Make sure you're demonstrating strengths across all 4 dimensions or categories. And that's how you're going to help yourself climb up the score chart ladder, I like to think of it as. So again, level 12 is the highest score anybody might achieve on a CELPIP test in any language element, writing included. So if you do achieve a level 12 in writing, congratulations. That means you're a very advanced writer in the English language. You'll notice that our CELPIP levels on the left here correspond exactly to the CLB levels on the right. So CLB stands for Canadian Language Benchmark. And a lot of us maybe are familiar with those. You might already know your CLB level if you've taken past English courses, for example. So if you've already got that piece of information, you should have a general sense about where your CELPIP level should lie then as well. So again, we're going to focus our attention today on how we can get up into this level 9 to level 12 range, as this will earn you the greatest number of points, of course, for immigration. And in order to do that, I will present a practice test question from both writing task 1 and task 2, but we're going to look at 3 different real test taker responses. So these were real questions from a past CELPIP test, and the 3 writers' work that I'm going to share with you today, I'll let you know right now that they received one of these 3 levels that I'm pointing to. So level 7, level 9, or level 12. All right, so we're looking at a level 7 would be probably high beginner, low intermediate range. We call that adequate, meaning we are answering the question and we're still developing our skills. Level 9 would be effective. So this would be your intermediate level. And level 12, of course, is advanced, right? The highest you can go. So that's what we need to know about scoring before we get into the questions. And I'll just take a quick pause and maybe just double check with Igor. Do we have any questions we want to go over now?
Yeah, Brandy. So we do have a couple of questions. I see that we have one of the viewer who's really active in the chat. Taj, shout out to you. Taj was asking why CELPIP test expires in 2 years and why there is an expiry test. Maybe you can give your take on it.
Honestly, Taj, I don't set the rules for immigration, so I could not tell you why 2 years is the standard. But the IRCC, which is the immigration body here in Canada, they're the ones that set the rules. So they've decided that 2 years is the expiry date for any language test, not just for the CELPIP. So again, I don't know why that is 2 years specifically, but it's very important for all of us to know there is an expiry. So if you're planning to immigrate, you do need to get all of your work and your test in order, so your score is still valid by the time you actually complete the process. Yeah. Maybe Igor, you would have a better sense given your field. I don't know why 2 years. Do you?
Again, I don't have a specific answer why it's 2 years, not 3 years, but from my understanding, if you don't practice language in 2 years, you will forget it. And if you don't forget the language completely, your level will drop significantly. And so IRCC wants to make sure that when you take the language test, you continue practicing it and using the language before you immigrate to Canada. And that's why it's my understanding that there is an expiry date on each of the language tests. And as Brandy mentioned, it applies to all tests. So the good thing is once you take the language test and once you submit your permanent residency application, the time that your PR application is in the process doesn't count towards those 2 years. So as long as you submit your PR application within the 2 years of expiry date, you don't have to worry about retaking the test if your application is approved. If for some reason IRCC refuses your application and you want to resubmit, then you would need to take another language test if 2 years has passed. Now, Brenda, we also have one more question from the user. I cannot pronounce the name of that user. It's in Arabic language. But the question was more generic about writing. and I understand it also relates more to writing task 1. If my writing exceeds 200 words, does it indicate good writing skills or not?
The word count, as you see in the instructions for CELPIP, say write between 150 to 200 words. The raters actually will accept a leeway of 10%. So you could go as high as 220 words and still fall within the range under task fulfillment. That's where they look at the word count. Now, if you go a little bit above that, it probably won't affect your score so much as long as your writing is on topic and you're still adding value to the response. I think it's not so much how much we write that's going to influence our level or our score. It's about the quality of the writing. So that 200 word count is an estimate about roughly in 27 minutes, because remember, you've got a finite amount of time to complete your test question. So in 27 minutes, about 200 words would give the raters a good opportunity to see exactly what level of writing you can produce, because it gives them enough to work with that they can look at your vocabulary, your sentence structure, your organization, your details. Again, most people wouldn't have too much time to go too far above that. And I'd rather, instead of you looking at your word count as your final goal, I think it's so much more important to look at how you can improve the quality of the writing you've already produced. So yeah, aim to get close to 200 words and then really brush up on the words there. Look at ways to include more descriptive language, probably add a couple more details that are really going to elevate interest and sophistication. Yeah, it's a very good question. And I have to say, no one's ever asked me that before. So I'm glad you're thinking of these elements as they relate to your test score. So nicely done. Thank you.
Yeah, I bet we're gonna have a lot more really good questions as we dive into the details of how to write and how to assess the task for each of the task components in CELPIP Writing Test. So I'll let you share the screen again, Brandy, and I'll pull the questions up as they appear.
Excellent. Okay, yes, and feel free to interrupt as we go. So here is our writing task 1 question that we are actually going to do a little bit of work with as a group, I'm hoping. So I'm hoping, first of all, can you please read it to yourself? I'll give you about 30 seconds or so to read the left and the right hand side. Okay. So again, you've got 27 minutes to write the email, but I still think we should develop our ability to skim read over and understand the task as quickly as we can, so we have more time for the writing. But again, just before I start asking you for some of your ideas, I'd like to very delicately or simply lead us into this with a quick true or false quiz. So you're welcome to put your ideas in that chat box there. So I've got 2 questions for you. The first one's here, and we just answered this. The more words you write, the more likely you are to get a high score. So we've just talked about that. So again, I'll mention it here. That's false. We've just established that it's not so much how many words you have, it's all about the quality of your work. So again, don't aim for a 300-word email, as you likely won't have time and you might have missed some details along the way otherwise. Here's a good one though, and I might challenge some of you today with this one. So dear sir or madam, I'm asking, do you think that that greeting would be an appropriate way to begin this writing task? So this particular test question, do you think it would be appropriate in the greeting line to say, dear sir or madam, and then start to write the email? What do you think? Is that true or is that false? You're most welcome to guess in the chat box, and then I'll reveal the answer.
Brandy, can I also participate? Am I allowed?
Yes. Absolutely. The more, the merrier.
Okay. I'll wait for more answers in the chat. Please don't hesitate to write your guesses. We're not here to judge. We're here to help.
Right. Yeah.
And then as soon as we get some of the responses, I'll also share my my view. Okay, so David says it's true.
Okay.
Lady Jan says true. Abimbola says true. Okay.
All right. Can I reveal the answer? Igor, what do you think?
I think um, I think you have to be more specific in how you address the email because you're writing to a specific person and you know who you're writing to.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So, Igor, you got the question right. This is false. Please don't do this. For three reasons, actually. So, Igor, you just gave us one reason why starting this email with "Dear Sir" or "Madam" is not the best choice. Because again, it's very general and quite vague. This question asks you to write an email to a famous writer and invite that writer to your class. So, of course, you would know that writer's name, right? You're the one inviting them, so you know who they are. So, you should have an actual name just to be more respectful and for the CELPIP score to be more specific. Remember those content details? The raters love specific details like names. Those are the easiest types of details to create. So it would be very helpful to have an actual person's name. The other reason, there are two reasons why this would be poor as well, and I'm going to share you one from the CELPIP test. Can you please come back to this very first sentence in the instructions? I'll just rest my laser pointer right there. You do know if this famous writer is a man or a woman. Maybe someone can identify that for us in the chat box. Are you writing to a female author or a male author here? Have a look at the instructions again.
I didn't notice this at first.
Yeah, most people don't. This is why I love asking these questions. Little bit by little bit, I'm planting these pathways in your minds. It's important to be able to discern or pick these up quickly. Okay,
Yeah.
so is it a man or a woman? Who are we writing to?
Everyone says it's a female. It's a
Yo, see
woman.
that word right there? It's tiny, but it's important. When we use the pronoun her or she, it obviously indicates it's a woman in this case. So we wouldn't say "Dear Sir" because that indicates a man. We'd want to say refer to this person as a woman. Okay, so from a CELPIP standpoint, just to follow the instructions, this would be incorrect. I think the other reason why I would advise you not to use this ever, not for the CELPIP test and not in the real world. When we say "Dear Sir" or "Madam," it's a little bit outdated. And believe it or not, language sometimes also is trendy. Words come into fashion and use and are popular, and then words fall out of popular use. So "Dear Sir" or "Madam" might have been used in times gone by when we didn't really know who we were writing to, but we don't really use that greeting anymore. It's best nowadays, if you truly don't know the name of the person to whom you're writing, it's probably best to just use a job title, like "Dear Restaurant Manager." That would be 100% more interesting and specific than saying "Dear Sir," which is quite vague in general. So all of these elements, I think, come into play for CELPIP, but for also the real world. And that's what the CELPIP test is all about. It's testing your ability to communicate in day-to-day language. Anyway, let's move on to, there we go. Let's move on to the fun part. So I hope you've got some creativity brewing because I'm going to rely on some of you to offer your ideas here. Let's pretend we are a CELPIP test taker and this is our exact question on the test. So we've got 27 minutes to impress the raters with all of our interesting details. So the very first part of this question says, we are an elementary school teacher. Now, elementary school teacher is very vague because it basically indicates you're teaching young children anywhere from kindergarten to about grade 6. So that would be age-wise about 3 years old up till about 10 or 11 years of age. And that is such a broad range. And we know by now the raters don't want broad and general. They want specific and interesting. So can I have one of you suggest a particular grade level that we're going to type in as we write to this famous author? We're going to let the author know what grade it is that we teach. So I just need a number between kindergarten and grade 6, and I'll take the first one that comes in today. Who would like to offer that up for our answer?
Let's wait. Let's wait. Anyone in the chat? Okay. The Jig says grade 6.
Perfect. Grade 6 it is. So we're looking at about a 10-year-old child or about an 11-year-old child, give or take. Now, if you've got children yourself, and they're around this age, that's going to help you because you can easily understand what a child at that age can do and what interests them. If you don't have children, or maybe they're not of that age yet, think back to when you were a 10-year-old child and try to imagine some of the activities that you would enjoy if a famous author was coming into class. So I think it's the easiest way to formulate any answer, especially on a timed test, when you can rely on your own life experience to help you come up with ideas quickly. So that's a really nice way to approach this question. It's grade 6. The next question I have, I'm hoping is going to be an easy one. We'll see. We need the name of a writer, and we already know it's a female writer. This is the author that we want to invite. So we need to do our greeting. We're going to say, "Dear." We're not going to use the author's first name because at least in Canadian custom or culture, it would be considered impolite to use someone's first name if we don't know them personally. So even though we are inviting this person to our class, this has to be a formal approach. Remember, they're a stranger to us. So again, we're not going to use any first name. We're going to stick with the title word Ms, M-S period. We're not going to say Mrs. We're not going to say Miss. Mrs. implies the woman is married. Miss implies that she's single. And in Canadian culture, when we don't know somebody, we don't discuss the marital status or the single status. Again, that's considered impolite. So a little bit disrespectful. We don't want to be disrespectful in our greeting. We want this author to come to us if she's available. So dear Ms., all we need is a last name. You can use a real person, you can make it up, it doesn't matter, but we need a name. Does somebody have a last name that we could use then? Dear Ms. Most people say Smith because it's the first one that comes to mind.
We
Anybody else
have
want to
a
say?
suggestion, Kimberly.
Yeah. What is it? Sorry, dear Ms.
Kimberly,
Okay, now Kimberly to me sounds like a first name.
first name.
So I think to be very careful here, I would go with a name that sounds like a last name. Otherwise, the raters might not be quite certain if you know the rules, right? So dear Ms., let's do something that sounds much more specifically like a last name. Use your own last name. You could do that. That would be easy, right? Whatever your last name is, you could put that in if you can't think of something else.
We
Dear
also have
Ms. White.
suggestion in the
Yeah.
chat, dear Miss Maria, which also wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But David suggests the last name of Rowlings.
Oh yeah, like J.K. Rowling, right. I would say 95% of the webinars I deliver when I talk about this question, that's the name that comes back right away, which is fantastic. Yeah, J.K. Rowling is one of the most well-known female authors of our time, I would say. So yeah, that tends to be the first one people think of. And again, you can make it up. You can say, Dear Ms. Smith. That's probably the most common, but Dear Ms. Rowling, that works as well. So you've got your greeting. It's formal, which it needs to be. That's the easy part. So you need to come up with these details quickly as they're easy. Think of a grade, think of the writer's name. That should take you 15 seconds at the very, very most, I think. And then this should be pretty easy as well. We need to write to this Ms. Rowlings, and we're going to introduce her to our school. What that means is we want to identify the name of our school. So again, I won't take the time to pull it out of you right now, as we do have lots to get through today. But think of the name of the school that you went to at any time in your life. Just make sure it's an elementary school. So I'll give you a few examples that are true for me. I went to Laurentian Public School. I also went to E.T. Carmichael Public School. I can think of other schools in the neighborhood. E.W. Norman Public School is right down the street from me, and so on. So grab a name, be quick about it, indicate that in your first paragraph. Your job is to introduce the school to Ms. Rowlings. Now, the title or the name of the school is essential, but what other details do you think Ms. Rowling would want to know before she decides if she can come visit? So again, you've got to come up with your own details here. If you were Ms. Rowling, what would you need to know before you said, sure, I can come? What would you want to know about the school?
Probably the first thing that I would want to know is who's writing the email to me? Who is that person? Is that person a teacher? So maybe introducing yourself and producing more details about what class do you teach, for what grade, would be really important.
Absolutely. So this first bulleted point here that we're talking about says to introduce Ms. Rowling to the school and our class. I think we had the suggestion we're teaching grade 6. Yeah. You could identify, again, your name you're going to sign at the bottom. So you don't really need to put in your name in the front end of it either. If you wanted to, I don't think it would be a horrible mistake, but it's probably not necessary. But if you wanted to say, I'm a grade 3 teacher at E.T. Carmichael School, here's the detail that I was hoping to grab from you. Where is the school? Like, how would this author, Ms. Rowling, know she can come if she's available if the school is so far away from her that it's inconvenient? She probably won't come, right? So if you could provide a little bit of description as to where the school is. I don't think you need to go out with an address. That sounds a bit too boring, in my opinion. But I think if you gave a prominent landmark, so you might just say, Dear Ms. Rowling, I'm a grade 3 or grade 6 teacher at E.T. Carmichael School. Our school is located in the downtown area of Vancouver. We're 3 blocks away from City Hall. Whatever comes to mind, right? That's not true for Vancouver, by the way. I just made those details up, but I based it on names and landmarks that I'm aware of. Okay, so it's totally up to you how you want to describe this with your own details coming in. But the important detail is you have to have the details if you want a level 9 or higher in your content. All right, just saying I'm a teacher is not going to cut it. It's far too general. All right, do we have any other ideas there before we move on to the second point?
I don't think so. It looks like the chat did not respond to this question because I provided my opinion first, so I'll
Ah,
probably
right. Yeah.
I'll probably change that strategy a little.
No worries. All right, let's go on to step number 2. So somewhere in the email, this is a different topic, right? We've already introduced Ms. Rowling to the school and the class. That's the first paragraph. We're going to leave an empty space as we're writing, and we're now going to go on to the second point. So we need to explain to Ms. Rowling why our grade 6 students really enjoy this Ms. Rowling's books. And the best way to do that is to actually pick a book. Can I ask you in the chat to give me the title of a book? It can be a real book. You can make one up. Doesn't matter as long as it sounds like something that an elementary school class would be reading. These are 10-year-old kids. So I don't think we want to suggest the psychology of the human species. That doesn't make sense for a grade 6 classroom. So is there a book that you enjoyed as a kid? Or maybe one you're reading to your kids right now? What do you think? We need a title. What book are we reading to our grade 6 class at E.T. Carmichael School?
We have suggestion: Ease
No.
Goes to School. That's the name of the book.
Okay, what was the person's name? Ease?
Yeah, EZE.
Ease. Okay, maybe that's a person's name, sure. So Ease goes to school. Yeah, I like it. That sounds like something perhaps that an elementary school class could read. Yeah, let's just take that one for now so we can move on to the other parts. We're again, we're going to say to Ms. Rowling, currently we're reading the novel Ease Goes to School. That's the easy part. Naming the title of a book is easy. Here's the part where it's maybe a bit more challenging. You have to come up with, on your own, from your own imagination, why this grade 6 class really enjoys the book Ease Goes to School. What ideas can you come up with? Think of a book that you've read at a young age. Why did you like it? Did it have something to do with the characters, the plot or the storyline, the pictures, the genre, the lesson that the book is teaching? You know, there's lots of ideas you can go with. What would you come up with here?
Yeah, and Randy, just to add to the previous suggestion, Taj is also clarifying that Ease apparently is pronounced like "eze," probably. That's my
Okay.
best guess. And he says it's an elementary book in Nigeria.
Oh, cool. Very good.
Yeah.
So again, that's coming up with something that you know from your own life experience is by far the easiest way to go. Yeah, thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. That's great. It actually sounds like an interesting title. I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear more. Okay.
Yeah. We
So
also
again, so
have another suggestion: the 10 Mystery of Writing for Beginners. Would that work?
ooh, that would work. Yeah, mystery stories are very appealing at all ages. But again, a 10-year-old child is old enough to start deducing facts detective style. So yeah, I think that sounds very intriguing. So yeah, maybe coming up with the title of a book that's more suggestive of its genre might help you because it's more focused. So if we go with that, can you give me that title again, please, Igor? The mystery, what was it again?
The 10 Mysteries of Writing for Beginners.
Okay, the 10 mysteries of writing for beginners. So if we say to Ms. Rowlings that we're reading that book to the students, I think it then becomes very easy to come up with a reason or two why the kids are loving it. So you might just say, after you've introduced the title, you might just say, the students are absolutely mystified by the actions of the main detective Poirot, and they always try to solve the case before the solution is revealed in the book. Okay,
Mhm.
so again, you're giving a very precise reason. Now, you might recognize the name of the detective I just used is Poirot. Poirot is a very famous detective from the female author Agatha Christie, and she's one of my favorite authors. So I borrowed the name of her detective to use in this answer. And that's okay. You can do that in CELPIP. Poirot is just the first name that came to my mind, but you can use any detective name whatsoever. So I think we've got a very interesting email and a very interesting response underway here as we're talking about these details. So one reason for that book title about why the students like the book, I think that's all we need there. That would be your second paragraph, probably 2 or 3 sentences worth. At some point, we have to invite Ms. Rowling to the classroom. So this is straightforward, but I think a very good invite is precise yet flexible, if that makes sense. So what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to say, Ms. Rowling, can you please come to class tomorrow? Because that's not realistic, right? She's busy. She's a famous author, and you need to give her notice in order to come. At the same token, though, you don't want to say, could you please come visit us sometime this year? Way too open ended. We want to nail down a time where she can come in. So have a good range. You decide what's appropriate. I think a 2-week range maybe is a good flexibility for her. So you might just say, would you be available to visit our classroom in the sometime in the next 2 weeks? Or you might say between April 1st and April 14th if you wanted to. And then from there, even you might suggest preferably in the morning if you're free, as that's when we have our language lessons between 9 and noon. Okay, so give a little bit of structure, but leave it open-ended. Don't just expect her to be available Wednesday afternoon for you, right? We need to be realistic about the situation. So your invite has to be there with some detail, and this might be hard. Let's see what we do with this one right now. So if we're going with that mystery book and the kids love trying to solve the crime before the solution's revealed, we've already written about that. Can you use that idea to now suggest to Ms. Rowling what type of activity she's going to do with your grade 6 class? Think of something to do with mystery stories. Does that help a little bit? What do you think?
Yeah.
Igor might have some ideas too.
Yeah, but let's see what people have to say in the chat. So dump your ideas in the chat box, and we'll pull them up.
It's kind of a bit of creative writing. I
Mhm.
love this kind of stuff, but I'm an English teacher, so I understand that my passion might not be shared by viewers taking a test. I understand that. But let's
Especially
see
when
what
you
we
take the tests under pressure.
exactly. Different story. But we can try to have fun now while we're watching and viewing and brainstorming together. It's helpful to share ideas because you'll give someone else an idea maybe that they wouldn't have thought of. So I like
Right.
that approach. Yeah. What could Miss Rowling do? Something to do with mystery stories with a grade 6 class of students. What possibly could she do? What would your students enjoy doing? They're 10 years old. You know, they'd be excited to have this author in class. What on earth would they do with her?
Yeah. Let's wait for one more minute, and we don't have any answers yet, other than the one that just came from the user whose username I cannot pronounce. Sorry. He says, or she says, give some idea. So I'm not sure if that is the actual answer, or if the user
It
wants
might be
us to share our ideas.
because it's yeah.
I also see that our moderator um, wrote having a Halloween party, listening to ghost stories.
Okay. I could see how that now if again I the dates I chose as I was giving an example earlier were April. So clearly if you wanted to do a Halloween activity, you would have to adjust your details and say, are you available sometime in the last 2 weeks of October to come in and talk to the students, blah, 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 blah. We'd like to have a Halloween party where all of the students can pick their favorite character from the book and dress up like them and act out a scene from the story for our Halloween party. That would be perfect. That would be amazing. If I was a 10-year-old kid, I would love that. I couldn't wait to come to school if I knew my favorite author was there and we were going to dress up like her characters, act out a scene, and then have our Halloween party. So that would be fun. That would be interesting. From the CELPIP score standpoint, it's very detailed and appropriate. Thank
Hmm.
you, moderator, for suggesting that. Yeah. Did we get any other ideas coming in there
Yeah,
just for
Taj
fun?
says having a haunted game.
Having a what? Sorry.
Haunted game.
Okay, so similar idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
playing a game.
yeah.
Okay. Now you
I
you
would
might want to.
probably say having a master class and developing their own mystery story with the
That's what I.
fictitious character.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. So whether you're having a Halloween party where they're acting out some of the scenes, maybe, or dressed as the characters, that's one approach. I'm with you, Igor. I guess again, I used to teach elementary school, by the way. I taught all grades from kindergarten to grade 8. So again, all these ideas come to my mind about what would the kids love to do. And a lot of students in grade 6 would love that. Their imaginations are developed. If you've been reading to them, they've got their own storyline. So why not have them basically write the next chapter of this book? So they're using characters that Ms. Rowling has established from the mystery novel, and then they come up with their own crime and their own whodunit, and they write their chapter. I think that's a fantastic and interesting idea too. They've got lots of choice. You just have to come up with one, and again, try to make it detailed so that you can really impress the readers with your vocab and your content. You've got 27 minutes to write the whole thing. Okay, so try to think of these details as quickly as you can. Anyway, well done, everybody. Thank you for your input. I'm going to show you 2 different responses now from real CELPIP test takers. Here's the first of the 2 I'll share with you. If you look at the bottom of this email, you'll see Lucas McTeacher is the name of this CELPIP test taker. That doesn't sound like a real name to me. I'm guessing Lucas made that up, and that's perfectly fine. On your CELPIP test, you can use your real name or just make one up. It does not matter. But because you're writing an email, you have to have a signature. So can you take about 30 seconds, please, and just skim read over Lucas's email to the writer. At the top, I see he's addressed this to dear Mr. Smith. Oops, it should be Ms. Smith, but that's a small mistake. It's not going to affect the score. It's so small. But yeah, we recognize that mistake, right? It's Ms. Dear Ms. Smith. Anyway, read Lucas's work and then let's see what you think. Let's talk about what he's done well and where he needs to improve. But read it first.
Yeah, let's wait for people to write their thoughts in the chat.
Yeah, I'll guide us through sort of specifically. So I don't mind asking you questions and having you answer. It's hard when you're new to this to just, in general, pick strengths and weaknesses. But I can certainly guide us, but I do want you to start thinking about your own assessment here as we go.
And Brandy, would you expect people to write the score that they would give, or?
You can guess. Remember, all 3 responses we're looking at today earned either a level 7, 9, or 12. And I'm going to share with you the score after we've talked about it. So
Yeah.
if you have a sense right now and want to share that, you're more than welcome. But I'm not going to reveal the right answer until after we've talked it through. But it is fun to try to get your own ideas going. Okay. So while you're doing that, feel free to start putting ideas in the chat box. I'm just going to very quickly double check that Lucas himself here has at least addressed those same 4 writing tasks, the ones that we just talked about from the writing question. So that first bulleted point asked Lucas to introduce Ms. Smith to the school and to the class. So here is Lucas's attempt at addressing that part of the test question. Now you can see the details themselves are quite simple and lacking. We'll talk about content next, so I won't worry right now about how detailed or interesting these are. I just want to know, did Lucas address that part of the question? So we're actually starting with that task fulfillment section of the checklist. We're starting backwards. Task fulfillment is at the bottom of that list, if you recall. So at least Lucas, we can give him a check for addressing that first task. The second task was all about why the kids like the book. Okay, Lucas did that at least. It's not detailed, but he's at least addressed it. There is an invite to the classroom. Yep. And then he does give a little bit of a sense of an activity as to what Ms. Smith could do with the students. So from a task fulfillment standpoint, so far he's in good shape. He's actually addressed all 4 parts of the test question. His word count, remember, is part of this task fulfillment, and that's okay. It's meant to be between 150 to 200 words. Lucas does that. The other element of task fulfillment is tone. And all the way through, I think Lucas is very respectful of Miss Smith's time. Everything here shows courtesy and so on. So the tone's looking good to me. But there's one tiny error with the tone, and it's right down here in the sign off. So faithfully yours might be a common sign off in different parts of the world. I've seen this commonly from students writing that grew up in parts of the world outside of Canada. So I don't mean to suggest, oh, that's wrong. What I am suggesting is, because this is a Canadian test, we're immigrating to Canada, we do need to learn that the culture and the customs of writing here. So if you were to say faithfully yours in an email here, it would be received as a little bit unusual or even inappropriate. You risk making the reader a little bit uncomfortable. It's just not commonly done. So instead of saying faithfully yours, you've got probably 2 or 3 really good choices. The most common sign-offs from a Canadian writing standpoint would be sincerely or regards. You could even say best regards if you wanted to get a bit fancy. But if all of you could memorize those 2 words, sincerely, regards, those are the 2 probably more common ones that you would use. So if Lucas could just adjust that and make it one of those 2, the tone would be ideal. So it's a small little tiny thing, but I pointed out as a bit of a writing tip moving forward. Okay, but overall task fulfillment's looking great. At the exception of that minor tone issue, all the other elements of task fulfillment have been completed well. But let's go back now and talk about the content. So remember when I drew some ideas out of you, we talked about, what grade am I teaching? What's the name of my school? Where is it located? When you look at the top line of Lucas's email, all he says is, I teach at an elementary school in the West End. We don't even know what grade he's teaching. All we know is it's an elementary school. We don't know which one. So how can Miss Smith agree to come or not? She doesn't even know where she's going, right? So he's definitely missed out on some of those details. When you look at the second line that's underlined, sure enough, Lucas says, oh, your novel is simple to understand. That's why the kids like it so much. We don't even know what novel he's writing about. So we've completely missed out that really important detail. And simple to understand is a good start. But again, what exactly is simple? Are there lots of pictures so the students understand the story? I don't know. So these are things Lucas maybe could add in. His invite is better. If you look at that second paragraph down, he clearly says, I would like to invite you as a guest speaker. Tone is very respectful, so that's very well done. Did you notice, though, after the invite, he gives more details about the invite down here. So he does talk about having classes every Monday and Friday between 9 to 11. So I think that's a very interesting, precise detail, but it probably belongs up here, right? We want to put our ideas together. We also maybe want to know when, like every Monday and Friday. Maybe are we inviting Miss Smith sometime in the month of April on a Monday or a Friday, right? So we could add those details. And last but not least, his activity here is decent. Tell us more about your novel and your writing process, what inspired you, tell us about every character. So sure, we have a general sense, I guess, about what Miss Smith might do for the students, but we don't know how many students there are. We don't know how long Miss Smith is expected to give this talk. And when we ask Miss Smith to talk about every character, that to me sounds very open-ended. Even Miss Smith might say, my goodness, I've got 20 characters in my book. Do you want me to really talk about all of them? So Lucas has a good start, but that's all it is. These ideas are not more fully developed. So content details are important in the sense of, again, looking at that intermediate level, which would be a level 9 or higher. More information, please. Good start, but we can do better if we push ourselves. All right, so we've talked about task fulfillment. We've talked about content. Now I'm turning the chat box over to you. Can you help me with the vocabulary, please? So we know that the raters like more interesting word choices that are very specific and precise. Are there any words here that Lucas has used that you feel stand out and demonstrate his best work from a writing standpoint? Even just look at the first paragraph if you need to. I see a few.
Yeah, as people are writing what words stand out in the chats, I also wanted to pull up some questions from
Sure.
Taj. He says, can you use greetings, Mr. Smith, as the way to address the email? And what about the warm regards in the sign off?
Warm regards is fine. Greetings is not. Greetings is, I don't even really know how to explain that one. I wouldn't say it's a bit casual. I think it's a bit casual. It's sort of like saying hi or hello or hey. You might do that with a friend. I think the best approach when you're addressing a stranger, especially a famous person like this, would be to use dear. Yeah, for this email, dear would be much better. Yeah, greetings, it just doesn't hit the right tone, if that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for asking. These are the types of questions I want you to ask today. So you'll know, again, not just for CELPIP, but in the real world too, when you're emailing anybody, it's good to know what's expected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good one.
Okay, let's see. Anyone in the chat, what words do you think stand out? And what words could be changed to improve the vocabulary?
Yeah,
Any
I've,
ideas?
I've got about four. There actually aren't a ton of very precise vocabulary words here. So if you're having a hard time finding words that you feel fit that parameter, maybe that's why. But I've got a couple. Even look at the top line. Like, I don't love elementary school in the West End. That's really vague. But if you back it up and look just before Lucas wrote elementary school, can you see what he wrote as his own position? He didn't just say, I'm a teacher. He says here, I'm a literature teacher. I thought that was interesting. So that's an example of throwing in a more precise or descriptive word that
Mm-hmm.
gives Ms. Smith a better sense of what's going on. Yeah. Now, simple to understand from a content standpoint, I didn't love that description of the book, but we're not looking at content right now. We're looking at vocab. And the raters might acknowledge that Lucas has the proper syntax, which is taking the correct words in the right order and putting them together to make meaning. And he did the same thing in that third line down, process of writing. I thought that was great. And the word inspired, I love that one. So those jumped out to me.
We do
The rest of
have
the,
the
yeah,
response
go
in
ahead.
the chat. The word thoughtful in the first
Ah,
paragraph.
interesting. Okay. Thoughtful by itself is an interesting word. I 100% agree. But in the context of this sentence, do you know what Lucas means? When he says, my students found your novel simple to understand and thoughtful. Does anybody here fully understand what Lucas means when he says it was thoughtful? Not so much, eh? Yeah. So again, when we choose our words, we want to be precise in their meaning. Yes, they want to be interesting. I like the word thoughtful, but the meaning is lost. So does Lucas mean that the story made the students reflect on their own lives and make some adjustments? Did it mean the story was so profound that it opened their eyes to different perspectives? So there's so many different nuances here of what thoughtful, having a story that's thoughtful could really mean. So yeah, this word is actually not the right word to use here. Yeah, profound might have been better, which is a really precise word. Yeah. So again, there's a lot to think about. I know I'm throwing lots of skills at you. So it's not just about choosing an interesting word, it's choosing the word that conveys the meaning you'd like. Yeah, but that's really the only one I saw that was a little bit out of place. Okay, so vocab. Our takeaway is Lucas uses words that make sense for the most part, but we would like to push him to use more precise language if we can. Okay, and last but not least, we need to look at his readability skill. And readability is the ability to write sentence structures, paragraphs, and proper grammar. So I think the structure of his email looks fine to me. We have our greeting, an empty line. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, each with an empty space between them. We have our concluding statement, a sign off, and a name. So structurally, the email looks fine to me. That's part of the score. But when you really go back in with a fine tooth comb, which is a casual expression that means look with a lot of detail, you'll notice that Lucas did not formulate his paragraphs correctly, not all the way. So remember, one paragraph talks about one main idea. And the moment you have a new main idea, you start a new paragraph. So Lucas wrote about his school and then the novel and why the kids liked it. And he did that in one paragraph. But these are meant to be two different ideas, right? These should be in separate paragraphs. He has the invite here, but then he has more details for the invite down here. So these details should probably go in one paragraph, and then he can tack in the activity that he'd like to do. So again, he's starting to emerge with his skills. We see paragraph structure, which is a step. Now the next step for Lucas is to understand how to properly connect the ideas into the paragraphs that convey the one idea, and to remember to switch paragraphs or start a new one when we have that next idea. So we're getting there. Sentence structure on the whole is a little bit simple. So when you look, even sometimes you'll notice it looks like a longer sentence, but the raters always notice things like this. So if you are relying on that simple word and to connect most of your ideas together, it's still demonstrating somewhat simple structure. So in English, there are so many more interesting and higher level conjunctions or transitions. These are the words you're going to use to connect ideas. And for level 9 and higher, the raters would like to see a good variety and again, more sophistication. So try not to rely just on and, but, so. Those are the three most basic conjunctions. We want to punch it up. Use words like because, although, additionally, another idea is, and what have you. There are just so many ways you could do it. So that's something Lucas can work on. All right, and go ahead, Igor. I sense you have a question.
Yeah, not actually a question, but a comment from Taj, who's a very active participant today. He just sent a message that he just booked the test while watching this.
Woohoo!
So we wish you very best. We wish you best of luck, and we really hope that the series of this webinar live streams will really help you in preparation of the for the exam. I also encourage you to go back and watch the recordings of the previous webinar sessions and attend our next webinar in 2 weeks. I'm not sure exactly when is your test date, but I'm sure these webinars will do help you preparing for the exam.
Yeah, thank you, and that's wonderful news, Taj. I'm glad that you're finding this helpful. Again, I think the biggest eye opener for people watching any of the Zoom sessions we do when we're interacting this way is some people are first surprised at the level of detail they might want to include. But once you know that those types of details are going to help you get that level 9 or higher, then it makes sense. And if you can actively participate as you are doing, well, and share some of those thoughts, you learn from each other and from Igor and me too. We can all pool our ideas and help us structure our own lessons. So that's great news for you, sure.
Brandy, oh,
sorry. Yep.
Sorry for interrupting. I'm not sure exactly when you stop talking or not. So sorry for interruptions. We do have a question in the chat that also relates to the first part of the email. The question is, can I use in the first sentence, I hope this email finds you well, and then we start to introduce ourselves.
That is a very polite approach. So from the tone standpoint, I know that's polite and friendly. I would say for the CELPIP test, you've only got 200 words to really hit these details in the vocabulary and the sentence structure. So when you say, I hope this email finds you well, you're taking up some valuable word count that would probably be better used for the actual writing tasks that we're talking about. So I think in CELPIP, I would skip over those pleasantries. That's what we call that. A pleasantry is just that opening line. In the real world, it probably makes more sense to use that. But I would use expressions like that maybe when you know the person fairly well. It's a subjective thing. It's not wrong if you do it. The meaning is very friendly, as I say. But I think for CELPIP, I would focus on developing the test question more, as I say. Yeah, good question. Good question. Sorry, was there a second part? Or did I get the whole question? Talked about
No, that was the whole question.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so we're just about done here with Lucas's response. And I wanted to point out that even though his sentence structure is a little bit on the simple side, you might have noticed a couple here and there, a couple little minor mistakes like this. All children loved your new novel that is meant to be. But again, we know what Lucas meant. Making a small writing mistake like that, it's not going to affect the score because it's very clear what he meant. It doesn't affect our ability to understand. But he does have one example of a quite a serious writing mistake. I'll read this whole sentence out and you can see for yourself that the idea is unclear. So Lucas has written here, I think this meeting will be useful for those who is interesting for everyone. So we're just not clear. So it's not up to the reader to try to think about what you mean. It's up to you as the writer to choose the words well that will convey the right meaning. But again, it's the only evidence of a major mistake. So overall, it's not going to drastically reduce his score. Having a major mistake like that is not going to drop you from a level 9 to a level 7, for example. If you made lots of mistakes like that, though, and we honestly didn't know the content very well, then yes, it would have a more serious impact. Anyway, we've had a good discussion, but now I'm curious. Now's your chance to vote if you'd like. This response earned either a level 7, 9, or 12. So it's either sort of a low intermediate, an intermediate level, or an advanced. What do you think Lucas got on this particular response? You want to just type the number into the chat box? 7, 9, 12. And Igor, you can think on it too and let me know after people have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it adequate? Is it effective? Is it advanced? So those descriptor words maybe are helpful too, as we look here.
Okay, Kevin says it's level 7.
Okay.
Let's see what other people have to say. Another 7. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I'll add from myself. I also think it's level 7.
All right. Well, you know what? You'd be absolutely correct. So this is still a decent, it's a good score. And I don't want to suggest otherwise. But what level 7 is exactly what the word adequate means. He answers the question. Most of his ideas make sense, but as you could see that a lot of the details are quite simple. The vocab tends to lean more heavily on simple words like elementary school, things like that. The grammar itself, the sentence structure is simple structure. There might be evidence of some complex grammar that's emerging, but we don't see that consistently all the way through. So Lucas, in this case, he's in a good spot because he understands the basics of written communication. It's now a matter of, again, fine-tuning the same skills we're all talking about to push himself further. So hopefully he could achieve a level 8 or a level 9 or even more. But that's a very strong level 7. That's exactly what a level 7 writer can do. And by the way, I should explain what you're looking at right now is called a performance profile. And when you take your CELPIP test, of course, you'll see the level. That's the most important part for you. But every single level on the test has a little write-up just like this. And you'll read about it on your score report. This little write-up just explains in general terms what somebody writing at your level could accomplish. So it's not precise to you specifically, but in general, at level 7, these are the skills basically that somebody should be able to demonstrate, give or take. The bolded words, that's what I did myself. You won't have the bolding on your own test, but I wanted to bold out sort of the main elements of level 7 so that we could easily see why Lucas got his 7. Anyway, let's do one more for comparison's sake. Same question. We're still writing to the author, and look at the author's name at the top. Dear Ms. Smith. It's the most common name in any language I've learned. Every language apparently has a Smith in their own words. Anyway, at the bottom of this email, our CELPIP test taker used a fake name again, named Mrs. Appleby. So could you please read Mrs. Appleby's email? Take about 30 seconds, and then we'll have a quicker look through at what she's done well and maybe where she needs to improve. Pretty good, eh?
Mm-hmm. Very full with details.
Yeah, yeah. So you might not know the exact level, but right away, you should notice a drastic difference in skill ability. So you just saw Lucas. Lucas had some good ideas, but Mrs. Appleby definitely is a stronger writer. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge first impression that I hope we all had, even just looking at that first paragraph. Yeah. Okay, so let's just see maybe how well she's done. As you're maybe thinking over strengths and weaknesses, I'll again just very quickly point out those four main tasks. Let's make sure Mrs. Appleby has not missed anything. So she does introduce Miss Smith to the school and to the class. St. Mary's Elementary School on Main, where I'm a third grade teacher. All the details we talked about earlier. Wonderful. Okay, that second point is why the book is so enjoyable. The third one would be the invite, and the fourth one would be a talk, or sorry, talk. In this case, it's a talk. It's the activity that she wants Ms. Smith to do with the students. So if we're just looking at task fulfillment, Mrs. Appleby has indeed addressed all four parts of the test instruction, just like Lucas did. We'll talk more about her content in a moment. It's more detailed, but from the task fulfillment, so far so good. Her tone is respectful, just like Lucas's was, but Mrs. Appleby selects the correct way to sign off. So sincerely is 100% better than, was it faithfully yours, I think, Lucas had there. And her word count is almost perfectly 200. So even though Lucas and Mrs. Appleby had the right word count, it was between 150 to 200. Can you see for yourself now with an additional 50 words that Mrs. Appleby has written, you can see how many more details she's had the opportunity to include in the writing. And that's what makes the content pop. It really attracts our attention. So again, you'll get full marks for writing 150 words, but if you could write 200 words anyway. Oh, that scared me. All right, let's continue on. Somebody's phone went off, I think. Anyway, so task fulfillment, my takeaway there is that it's very well done. I do want to get back into, oops, I guess I can go back here. I do want to look at the content details here as well. So again, we've got the name of the school, the grade level. We do see that she teaches 25 kids. We also see the name of the book, etc. There are a handful of things, believe it or not, that are missing. This is the biggest one I noticed. It would require her activity a 20-minute talk and a Q&A at the end. So she wants Ms. Smith to come talk to her students for 20 minutes and then answer their questions, which sounds about right. But if you were Ms. Smith, I'm hoping you would have a question. You would be seeking clarification. So what has Mrs. Appleby forgot to include in this response? Does something jump out at you as obvious here?
The exact time, the date.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The date. The date. We'll get to that in a second. But as far as the activity, if I am Mrs. Appleby and I said to you, Ms. Smith, can you please come to my class and talk to my students for 20 minutes? You would then say to me, maybe. You would say,
Mornings
what
or
would you,
afternoons? When?
you would say, what would you like me to talk about?
Oh
That's what's
yes,
missing here.
you're right.
How
That
on
was
earth can
another
Ms. Smith
point that they asked in the task.
exactly, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
we have sort of the beginning of an activity, but it's not quite enough. So that would be the weakest part of all of her details. The rest looks good to me. This one, I agree with you. In the coming weeks is not ideal. Like you said, in the next 2 weeks, preferably Monday and Friday, 9 to noon, or what have you. So we could definitely revise that a bit. So 2 points that are less than ideal, but look at all the other details she adds in. This is my favorite part of this response. After she introduces the school, she writes these 2 sentences, and I'll read them out loud. And I just want you to think about the creativity. She says, perhaps you have noticed our bright pink mural in the neighborhood. It gets quite the attention from people passing by. So that detail isn't necessary for Ms. Smith to understand where the school is. She already knows it's on Main Street and so on. But isn't it interesting? When you get an advanced level writer like Mrs. Appleby, including such creative details, what she's doing is showcasing a personal writing style. I think a lot of us, especially as we're so focused on those test tasks, a lot of us might not even think to add these ideas in. But do you know the expression, the icing on the cake? Have you heard this idiom before? These 2 sentences are the icing on the cake. They're just added little details that elevate the interest and sophistication even more than an already well-formulated response. So again, as you're practicing your writing, you might not already be working at the advanced level, and that's okay. But start thinking about some of these details and don't be afraid to experiment as long as your details are appropriate for the question, like this one is. We're still describing the school. So that worked out quite well. She does name the title of the book. It sounds like fun. It's a third grade class, and she's teaching them Edward in the Garden. She's explained a scene where Edward fought the rabbits off his carrots. And she says the students loved it so much they thought it was funny. So all of these details are believable. Again, we know how many students are there. So most of her details are great. She's missed a couple of points, but you can see that she's more than made up for them in all the other details she's included. Okay, last but not least, I know we're running a wee bit short on time, but do we have a moment for you to identify some words that you thought were very inspiring or impressive? I see so many words here I could pick out, but maybe we could ask some of our viewers to put one or two ideas in the chat box. And Igor too probably has a few. What's your favorite part of this? There's so many to choose from, really. She's a gifted writer, Mrs. Appleby is. Yeah, it's an impressive vocab she has for sure. Really makes the writing come alive. And I can imagine this as she's typing it out.
Reading this email, it reminds me about reading the newspapers such as New York Times, for example. You know, they always use the words that you typically don't use in the day-to-day conversations. And there's so many of them. So no wonder. Maybe this person is working for the media.
Maybe she definitely could. I think she definitely has the skill. She's adaptable, and that's what an advanced writer does. They're able to adapt their style and ideas to suit the task, right? So yeah, I can see evidence. Anyway, all right. Do we have any words? And if not, it's okay. I can share some, but I just thought I'd ask.
Kevin says delirious is the word.
Yeah, delirious with laughter. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I'll explain what that means. So again, there's so many, and there's probably more. I just underlined a few. But that whole notion where she says your books are so funny, and that's why the students like it. So when she says the kids are delirious with laughter, in this sense, she means the kids are almost they're laughing so hard, they're almost crazy, like they're out of their mind. And if you've ever been around young student or young people, children, who are hyperactive and can't even control themselves, she literally says they were chuckling on the floor, which is an expression to show how funny and how uproarious this book was to them. It wasn't just ha ha ha, it was hysterical. So these are all really high level, interesting vocab words that allows us to imagine these kids all laughing in unison in class. Well done, well done. Yeah, really great ideas there. There's one teeny tiny word choice error. Even though the writing is so good, Mrs. Appleby made a mistake right here. Your presence would motive and guide them greatly. Meant to be, yeah. Your presence would motivate and guide them greatly. So some of us might have caught that error. And yes, it's a mistake. The raters would notice it too. But first of all, we know what Mrs. Appleby means. This mistake does not affect our ability to understand the response. So it's a minor mistake, and it's one mistake. Look at all of the other fantastically high-level vocab words here. So it's okay to make some mistakes on your CELPIP test, believe it or not. You can still score a very high score. Nobody is looking for perfection from you. The raters just want to see evidence of high skill or whatever skills you can demonstrate. They're not going to penalize you every time you make a little mistake. And that is really reassuring to know, I think. Anyway, with this in mind, let's guess the score. I'm hoping this is obvious, but it might not be. So let's see. Do you think it's a 7, a 9, or a 12?
Let's see what people have to say in the chat.
Lucas got the 7. Keep that in mind. So you have something now to compare this to. This one's definitely higher. Do you think it's a 9, though, or a 12? Is it intermediate? Is it advanced? What do you think?
And while people writing their answers in the chat, remember that to qualify for the Express entry and get the maximum number of points, the boost of points, you would want to score at least CLB 9, which corresponds to the level 9 in CELPIP. It's so much easier with CELPIP. All the CLB levels correspond with the levels in CELPIP. So we do have a couple of answers. So we have 2 people who say it's level 12. Taj is guessing it might be level 11, so it's not perfect, but it's close to perfection.
All right, that's a neat way to think of it. Yeah, if you notice, levels 11 and 12 are both considered advanced. And I get asked all the time, well, then what's the difference? It's hard for me to show that to you now without having two side-by-side examples to draw on. We've got those on our website, and I'll show you where you can find those later. But a level 11 will still be high level in all the ways we've talked about, but a level 12, which is what Mrs. Appleby got, by the way, is just that little bit of extra flair, that little bit of extra creativity and boost. So that's what I keep referring to as I say style. The writing style of a level 12 writer is very adaptable, and she could probably, as Igor says, write for a variety of audiences, knowing what the task is and just adjusting her words. So you'll see that there were so many, especially the vocab words were very precise, very specialized. Sometimes she might use common words too, like chuckling on the floor is a bit casual, but it works in this situation. So a level 12 writer can really change it up and meet the task requirements regardless of what the question's asking them to do. So well done. Level 12 does not mean perfect. That, again, I can't emphasize that enough. There were a tiny couple of little mistakes, as we saw, a few details missing, a wrong word choice, but she still demonstrated strengths enough across all of those categories. So level 12 for Mrs. Appleby. Anyway, we'll finish off with our emails here. You know you need a greeting, and we have talked about different ways to do that in a formal setting. I would say most of your emails on CELPIP will likely be formal, but just read the question on your test very carefully. Make sure you know who you're writing to, and then adjust your greeting appropriately. All right, the reason you're writing should go in that first paragraph, usually anyway. Your middle paragraphs or body paragraphs is where you get into the specific details. So in this case, it would be explain why the students like the book, invite the author to the classroom, explain what the author can do with the students. So different main ideas belong in different paragraphs. That's really helpful. And then a concluding statement in this case would probably just, again, we hope you can spare the time to visit. That would be appropriate here as a last sentence. It's reminding the author that we'd like her to come. And then we know we need a sign off. So we've talked about these ones. Okay, you'll notice too the capital letters usage and the commas in the set or the sign offs as well. If it's casual, you could use cheers. But again, I think on CELPIP, most of your writing will probably be more formal. But again, you be the judge of that depending on the question. Sign your name or use a fake one. It doesn't matter. Just have a name. So you've completed the email structure is the end of it. All right, great work with that. Do we have time to do one more little response? Is it okay, or should we? I wanted to show you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. Yeah, I'm mindful of time, but yeah, I think we can do one more here. Here is our second writing task. So the computer screen looks similar. You've got the left and right, but it's a completely different type of question. So can you please just read it first to yourselves? Look at the left to understand who you are and what's going on, and then look at the right to identify your possible options for writing. So I'll give you about 40 seconds to read that through. Mm-hmm.
What a
Okay.
dilemma. What a dilemma.
Yeah. Lots of choice, lots of choice. Kind of a fun one to do, if you ask me. All right, let's really quickly do a true or false just to make sure we know what's going on. Alrighty. You should include made up details about the hotel and the training. So I guess that would mean, could you have the name of the hotel and indicate where it is? Could you specify the type of skills that we're training, like conflict resolution or verbal communication, et cetera, et cetera? So would this be a good way to approach a CELPIP writing piece? True or false? And I hope this is obvious based on what we just talked about earlier. True or
Let's see.
false?
Let's see what people have to say.
If you want that level 9, what will you do? What should you do? I'm pushing you in the right direction here, I hope anyway.
Let's see. Anyone? Anyone?
True or false?
Brandy, maybe while people are answering this question, you can
Mhm.
quickly tackle the other question that we have from Kevin. So Kevin
Okay.
is wondering if one does well with the letter writing, probably got 10 to 12, um, then the second part of writing was not too good, maybe a level 7. Does that affect the total score for writing module?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, first of all, I would say, I can't say this 100% of the time, but I would say if you're getting a level 10 in one task, it would be unusual to get a drastically different result in the second, like a level 7 or 6. Your writing ability would likely be similar in both. And even if your content is weaker in one question, content is one part of that checklist. You still need to take into account vocab, grammar, and task fulfillment. So again, your scores would probably be a little bit closer, but you could, and it does happen. You might get, say, like a 9 in one and a level 8 in the other, or what have you. But yes, you'll get an individual score on each of those writing tasks, and then those two scores are averaged together. So yeah, do your best on both. But keep in mind, it's sort of a package deal, if you will, and your overall writing score on the CELPIP test will reflect the combination of the two, if you will. Yeah,
Okay.
good question.
Well, we don't have any answers for this question, so maybe I can take my guess.
Yeah.
I think it's false. You should not include made up details.
Nope. You should. Yep.
You should?
Whenever possible. Whenever possible, you want to make
Oh.
as many details as you can. Yeah. So when you look at those options A and B, they're opposite. So you're writing to your boss either way. And in option A, you're going to ask to keep our vacation time. You don't want to go to the hotel. Option B says, sure, I'll give up some vacation and I'll go to the hotel. So rather
Okay.
than just keep saying, go to the hotel, name the hotel, give those interesting details that we talked about earlier. And for
Okay.
training, what are you doing? What are you doing there? Are you learning conflict de escalation? Are you learning proper HR management? So these are the types of details that will help with your content.
Okay. Because I probably misunderstood the question a little bit. I thought it's more like, do you need to include the details about the itinerary, the rooms that you're staying in,
Okay.
like the
I
actual
see. I see. Yeah,
day-to-day
fair enough.
agenda
Fair enough.
for the trip?
Yeah. Yeah, you probably don't need to go into that detail because once you select your option, you need to explain why. And I
Hmm.
think knowing what hotel and even where, and pick one you've been to. Like the last hotel vacation I did was the Rio Resort in Cabo San Lucas down in Mexico. So I probably just throw that into my writing because it's at the top of my mind. I was there a while back. And training, base it on your own day to day. You know, for me, I'm an English teacher, so maybe for me it might be all about communication and learning a new tech platform to deliver online webinars or whatever it is, right? Use your own life experience to help guide that. Yeah. And this other question, I'll just quickly go through this for time's sake. It says here, you can support your choice, whatever option you've selected, and identify weaknesses with the other choice. And this is
Hmm.
definitely one option you could. So when you're writing your answer, the very first line is going to identify which of these two options you're selecting. Once you've done that, you yourself have to come up with reasons why you feel that way. So if you want to just keep your vacation, you'll probably, first reason I think of is I'd like to spend time with my own family separate from work. So that might be your main reason, number one, and you give a few examples. Your second reason to support that, you could think of another reason why vacation is important to you, or you could then point out a weakness with the hotel instead. Maybe the hotel is in a very hot and sunny climate and you don't do well in the heat. It makes you nauseous and you're prone to sunburn. So you could easily point out problems with that other choice in a way to convince your boss in this case that you don't want to go there. You'd rather just have your vacation and be in charge of that. So you've always got choice when you're persuading someone to agree with you, but you have to support your own reason one way or the other, basically. All right. So with this question, we're going to do one more little response here today. This one is an email structure, as you can see. If you'd like to use email for task 2, you certainly could. You don't have to use email. So please make sure you choose one that works for you. Anyway, This is Larry's response. Larry is our CELPIP test taker, and he's writing to his boss. It's quite formal, but I think that works for this situation. Dear Mr. Smith, if you knew your boss well enough, you might just say, hi, Chris. That's my boss's name, and you know, I know him well enough. That would be my approach. But you would pick the greeting that's right for you in the situation. Anyway, read it through, please. Take about 30 seconds, and we'll do a last-minute check of those checklist criteria and reveal his score. Hmm. Oh, right, Larry, not bad. I see some really wonderful things happening here and a few things that maybe we could advise Larry on how to do even better, because it's pretty good the way it is. For our final analysis, what I am doing here, you'll notice, is on the right-hand side of this computer screen, I put back up in gold print the rater's question from that checklist. So for the content, which we've been talking about all session so far, the question the raters are trying to determine is, how well are your ideas organized and developed? So keeping that in mind, when you look at Larry's response, he successfully identifies his position in the opening line. I have to admit, it's worded a little bit strangely when he just says, I would like to keep the vacation policy. It's a little bit unusual. I think he could have phrased that more precisely. He might just say, I would rather keep my vacation days as previously booked instead of going to the hotel. That's how I would do it, just to avoid any confusion. But we know what the test question's asking, and I think just looking at the words that Larry's chosen, keep the vacation policy, we can make that assumption as to what position he's supporting. What works here as far as organization and coherence is you can see that each paragraph discusses a separate reason why Larry wants to keep his vacation. He even uses these sequential transitions. So firstly, secondly, finally. So every time as readers we see one of those words, we know a different new main idea is coming up. And that's so helpful for the reader to understand. Now, looking at that first paragraph there, the first reason he gives for why he doesn't want to go to the hotel is because he looks at training would benefit himself, he acknowledges, but also the company. So to that end, what he says here is, therefore, the training at the hotel would be an extension of work and should not be counted as vacation. So he sees those two elements as separate. I like this idea. It's high level, it's almost abstract thinking, but it's very logical. And it makes sense when I see how he's phrased it. So he's presented his idea and he has supported it quite well. That second reason down, he gives another reason why he wants to keep his vacation separate. And this is about family. Most of us would probably think of this idea first. And he specifies he's got a wife and children. So he clearly wants to spend time with them and not give those days up to go to the hotel. That final reason he provides here is now a weakness about the hotel. He says the hotel would be a distraction. That's his main idea. And he gives examples of those distractions, which are crowds and heat. So for every main reason he's presenting, he does give us some supporting details. That is exactly what the raters want to see from you, especially if you're looking to achieve that level 9 or higher. So I think all of those ideas have been organized quite well. The coherence works for sure. All right, now most of all those details we just looked at were fairly precise, but there are a few other ones that could be improved. So in this second paragraph, if you just look at the way these ideas are written, the vacation time is when I spend the days building relationships, or my family, I guess, will not like to see me less. So those are quite general, quite vague, as compared to the ones we just looked at, like distractions, like crowds and heat. You can see the marked difference in the level of precision when we looked at the earlier examples to these ones. So again, overall, Larry is using these developed ideas, but he just has a few examples where we want to push him further, is all we're saying. It's a pretty good job, but keep going and more like that, please. And as we mostly see, and just about every response really, is we do see evidence of strong vocab and perhaps some words that could use a little bit more precision. So we're on to the vocabulary section. So to make this easy for us, I went ahead and color coded the screen. So in blueprint would be words that are actually well phrased and well suited, you know, when you look at all these examples. And the words in orange are either a little bit awkward or not quite precise. And we talked about some of these examples again. Again, the readers will notice examples of each, and hopefully we see more evidence of correct vocab and precise vocab, which is what Larry's done. So he makes up a little bit for his weaknesses by demonstrating to the readers that overall he does have a fairly strong command of his vocabulary here. Okay, now we're on to readability. This is again paragraph structure and sentence structure. So we already know that Larry's his paragraphs are quite easy to understand, given that he started them off with firstly, secondly, and finally. I would say as far as spelling and punctuation and such goes, there are no major errors. There are a handful of phrases that are what I would say a little bit less than ideal. They're not great, but we understand what he means. So in that opening, when he says, well, I really appreciate your offer on the job training. It's not quite correct, but we get what he means. I think we could improve that by saying, well, I really appreciate your offer to receive training at the Beachside Hotel. So we could play with the words to be a little bit more clear. But again, we know what Larry means. And for the most part, his ideas are fairly well established there. And from a task fulfillment, I would say he's definitely answered the question. He's given his position. He's given 3 logical reasons why he feels that way. And the last element we need to look at is his tone. So I would say overall, Larry's tone is very respectful. I want to finish today's writing lesson on maybe introducing to some of us a persuasive technique that you can use on CELPIP, but also in the real world. This is going to help you out a lot when you want to win an argument and persuade somebody to agree with you. Okay, so again, going back up here, remember Larry's position is he wants to keep his vacation time separate from work. But instead of writing to his boss and starting with his opinion, remember his boss wants to send the workers down to the hotel. So Larry is basically disagreeing with the boss's opinion. So instead of starting with an opposite opinion, Larry is acknowledging his boss's idea first. This shows extreme respect for his boss. So he says to his boss, while I really appreciate your offer to go to the hotel for training, I would like to keep my vacation policy or my vacation time separate, right? So acknowledging the other person's ideas first, again, respects them, but it softens their disappointment when they find out that you're actually contradicting or disagreeing with what they're saying. And he does the exact same thing down here. It's the same technique. So before he gets into, I prefer learning in a more conducive environment, meaning I prefer learning in the office. Before he gets to his idea, knowing his idea is different from the boss's, again, he acknowledges the boss's idea first. So while being at a beachside hotel is very inviting, I prefer learning back at the office where I'm away from distractions and so on. So this persuasive technique, as I say, is very helpful. It shows respect, which is wonderful for tone, but it also shows an ability to demonstrate higher level thinking as well, putting the other person's idea first and then coming in with your own. It's a different approach, if you will. So that'll go a long way, not just for CELPIP, but in the real world. If you ever have an email to write to, at work, maybe to a client or someone that you're trying to work out a challenge that's arisen, this technique will help. So maybe take that, keep that in mind, I guess, as you move forward. Anyway, this is our last one. You can probably guess the score out of a process of elimination. Lucas started us off today with a level 7, and Mrs. Appleby, we know, got the level 12. So when I ask you to guess, there's only one level left. So we know that Larry, I guess, received a level 9. So as Igor and I mentioned, that if you are looking to achieve at least that level 9, which is where we want to be for permanent residency, express entry, etc., looking at what Larry just wrote, if you feel your writing abilities are about on par with his, then you're looking in good shape to continue your skills along your journey. So a level 9 writer is intermediate level. They have effective writing. What they're demonstrating here is writing in sentences that are demonstrating more control over those complex structures. You'll notice Larry's sentences were more complex. While I believe the hotel would be a good opportunity, I believe that vacation would be better. So these complex structures, vocab is emerging. It's not perfect. It's nowhere near the level of Mrs. Appleby's, but we definitely see more evidence like distractions, crowd, heat, conducive. There's a lot more example, I guess, of concise or precise, language as well. There will still be some little grammar and writing errors at a level 9. You might even see a few at level 10, albeit fewer. But again, level 9 is intermediate. The types of mistakes we make here are not going to affect our ability to understand. Remember, Lucas had a sentence that we really couldn't understand at all. That's typical more at the level 7. By the time we get to the intermediate level, any mistakes are usually minor. All right, they're not, again, not affecting our ability. So that's pretty much it. We'll end it there. I just wanted to remind you before you log out for the day, maybe, that the CELPIP test is accepted by or for Student Direct Stream, which is called SDS for short. So if anyone is applying for a study permit, the CELPIP test score can be accepted for that. Again, I touched on the 2 writing tasks. I do usually 2-hour webinars on each of the language skills for CELPIP as well. So we do webinars on reading, listening, writing, and speaking, and we've even divided the writing and speaking by level. So we have a series for level 5 and also for level 9+, which is what we did today. So again, it's been wonderful doing a series with Igor as well here. So you've got lots of opportunity if you wanted to join into any future webinars as well. The link to our website's at the bottom, celpip.ca/webinars. All right, we have a YouTube channel as well. So especially for, I was at Taj that has booked a CELPIP test today. You might want to check out our YouTube channel, which is called CELPIP Official. We've got lots of instructional episodes for CELPIP. Anything we do live there is recorded and posted on the channel. So you can browse by skill set, listening, reading, writing, speaking, and we'll have different practice test questions, and we'll do a lesson sort of similar to what we did today, but shorter, usually about 40 minutes or so per. And we do have 2 free practice tests right on our website at celpip.ca. So please, before you take your actual test, try a practice test first, and then you'll understand more about how it's structured. And if there's any weak areas that are hard for you, you'll still hopefully have time to fix them before you take the real test. And again, there's a bookstore. I won't go through these in detail, but you can always poke into our bookstore, find different materials there for purchase if you wish. There's the link to the bookstore there. But I'll leave you with this today. This is our customer service and sort of links to our social media channels as well. So it just reminds you, we go live on YouTube twice a month, sorry. And on Instagram, we're usually live about once a month. And a reminder that Igor had mentioned earlier, we have got 1 remaining episode left in our session here in collaboration with Igor. It's going to be the speaking session. So that's the final language component of your CELPIP test. So on Thursday, April 11th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is Alberta time, we'll come back in and do some speaking. And again, if I'll do a little lesson first to explain what skills we want to demonstrate. And I will have a CELPIP test practice question at the end. If any viewers would like to join in and actually practice delivering their answer or part of their answer, that would be fun as well to have you in. Again, I'm not a rater, so I can't give you a score and I can't launch into a one-on-one teaching lesson. But I think it would be beneficial to give anyone interested practice to present their own speech out loud. And again, as a group, we can give constructive feedback if there are things that we notice were really well done or any little tips that we could use to improve. I think that would be a great way to finish off. Anyway, I will stop sharing my screen now and come back to you. And we'll see if we've got any questions that I can answer for you. There.
Well, thank you so much, Brandy. I don't think we have any questions at this moment. Maybe some questions will pop up, but I just wanted to use this opportunity to, again, share my appreciation for what you do. Thank you so much for this very informative webinar. I've learned myself quite a few things that I would be missing in the test. And I'm sure I missed those things when I was taking the test a couple of years ago. So we already know that at least 1 viewer from today's episode has already booked the test, and we wish him well. Again, Taj, highly encourage you to go and watch all of the previous recordings of our webinars Again, go to CELPIP official YouTube channel, subscribe, and try to invest yourself as much as possible. Spend as much time preparing for the test, learning about how to score better in the test. There are so many useful materials, especially the material that we're about to share with our subscribers and our viewers for free. So this is a CELPIP Accelerate Reading and Writing material. So you can get it for free by using the coupon code that you can see at the bottom of the screen. You can also find the coupon code in the comments section. All you need to do is go to CELPIP Store on the CELPIP official website, and then add CELPIP Accelerate Reading and Writing to your cart, and then log in or create your CELPIP account, depending on whether you have an account already or not. And at the checkout, just enter this coupon code, Canadian Immigration Institute 2024, and a set of different letters at the end. That would be really funny if I would be trying to pronounce all of them. And also remember that the last day to redeem this coupon is April 12th. So it's going to be the day after our last webinar in the series. So hopefully the materials will help you to prepare better for the exam and score higher. Remember, you need at least CLB 9 to get those extra CRS points for expert entry. But you can also use CELPIP for citizenship application, SDS applications, and so many other applications where you need to demonstrate your language proficiency. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll wait for a minute or two, and then we will be wrapping up this webinar.
Yeah. The writing session, by the way, is my favorite. Again, I know I'm an English teacher and I'm biased, but I also love to read. And I think it's, for me, I find it enjoyable to come up with so many of my own details and creative ideas. And I always really enjoy hearing feedback from anybody watching these episodes and seeing how they would approach these questions. And oftentimes an idea will come into the chat and it's something that I hadn't thought of either. And that's the fun of this, because we've all got different ways of I guess, understanding the question. But when we see other people's ideas, it gives us ideas about what we might want to do next. So I do appreciate that. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any questions right now, so I propose that we wrap this up. And again, subscribe to CELPIP official YouTube channel. Also consider subscribing to Canadian Immigration Institute YouTube channel and put the bell button. Just click on it and you will receive notifications when we go live. The next masterclass, oh my god, the next live stream is scheduled for April 11th, same time, 10 a.m. MDT. So we will see you there, and good luck, everyone.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thanks for having me again, Igor, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.